my Prime Minister has said unequivocally that this cannot be an era of war. To strive for a peaceful solution through dialogue and diplomacy, India has decided to abstain. Our decision to abstain is consistent with our well-thought-out national position. India stands ready to support all such efforts aimed at de-escalation. India is deeply concerned at the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, including the targeting of civilian infrastructure and the deaths of civilians. We have consistently advocated that no solution can ever be arrived at the cost of human lives. Escalation of hostilities and violence is in no one's interest. We have urged that all efforts be made for an immediate cessation of hostilities and an urgent return to the path of dialogue and diplomacy. We believe that the global order that we all subscribe to is based on international law, the UN Charter, and respect for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of all states. These principles must be upheld without exception. Dialogue is the only answer to settling differences and disputes, however daunting that may appear at this moment. The path to peace requires us to keep all channels of diplomacy open. We therefore sincerely hope for an early resumption of peace talks to bring about an immediate ceasefire and resolution of the conflict. India stands ready to support all such efforts aimed at de-escalation. It is also unfortunate that as the trajectory of the Ukrainian conflict unfolds, the entire global South has suffered a substantial collateral damage. As developing countries face the brunt of the conflict's consequences on food, fuel, and fertilizer supplies, it is critical that the voice of the global South be heard and their legitimate concerns duly addressed. We must therefore not initiate measures that further complicate a struggling global economy. Mr. President, there are other pressing issues at play, some of which have not been adequately addressed in the resolution voted today. Our decision to abstain is consistent with our well-thought-out national position. I would also quote my External Affairs Minister from his address to this very August Assembly last month, and I quote, "India is on the side of peace and will remain firmly there. We are on the side that respects the UN Charter and its founding principles. We are on the side that calls for dialogue and diplomacy as the only way out. We are on the side of those struggling to make ends meet, even as they stare at the escalating costs of food, of fertilizers, and of fuel. It is therefore in our collective interest to work constructively, both within the United Nations and outside, in finding an early resolution to this conflict." Unquote. Mr. President, my Prime Minister has said unequivocally that this cannot be an era of war. With this firm resolve to strive for a peaceful solution through dialogue and diplomacy, India has decided to abstain.